Welcome to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast, your weekly news roundup of hunting, fishing, trapping, and conservation stories from around the Gem State. Hosted by Fish and Game's Public Information Specialist, Connor J. Lease.
And welcome back to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast. I'll be the first one to admit today that I sound like crap, so bear with me on this one. We got a light pack of stories this week, including a winter feeding update on Bullwhacker elk, a pair of ice fishing reports from Henry's Lake and Lake Cascade, and a couple hunter education courses coming up in the Magic Valley region. But first, we're flagging down the Fish and Game helicopter and surveying elk in the Weiser River Zone. Starting in early January, staff in our southwest region will begin an aerial survey of the Weiser River Zone elk population, one of many survey efforts taking place around the state this year that help game managers understand population numbers and trends. The survey is expected to take several weeks to complete, depending upon the weather. People can expect low-flying helicopter operations for the first few weeks of January, including in a portion of the area affected by the 2024 paddock fire. Here's Regional Communications Manager Brian Pearson.
We understand that people may have some concerns about running an aerial survey in the burn area, but we're taking steps to minimize impacts to big game during these survey flights.
A typical abundance survey may take several weeks to complete and is typically flown between mid-January and early March to ensure deer and elk are concentrated on low elevation winter ranges. Typically, each area is surveyed every 5 to 6 years.
Abundance surveys are labor-intensive and costly, and because of that, we're only able to conduct them in most areas on a 5-year rotation. Given the relative infrequency of these abundance surveys and the fact that they serve an important role in refining and verifying our population modeling, we place a high importance on flying these when they come around.
Generally, impacts to big game animals from these abundance surveys are minimal to begin with, but Regional Wildlife Manager Regan Berkeley said that biologists and survey pilots will be doing all that they can to avoid disturbing mule deer, which tend to be more susceptible to winter mortality. Disturbances to elk, which tend to be more resilient, will be kept to the minimum required for biologists to complete the survey. Taking this into consideration, Fish and Game staff also decided not to capture and GPS collar mule deer in the Weiser River deer units this year.
Our annual capture and collaring efforts also provide critical information for wildlife managers, but this year, our concerns about placing additional stress on the mule deer and the Weiser units outweighed our need for that data.
That's all I got on this story, but if you want to stay in the loop, go read Brian Pearson's story on our website and follow the Southwest Region's Facebook page for updates. For this next story, we're popping over the West Mountains to talk about Lake Cascade with Regional Fisheries Biologist Anthony Dangora. As we enter the new year, the ice fishing season on Lake Cascade is off to a strong start. Winter arrived early this year, and our fisheries folks have received reports of people catching some nice perch, trout, and coho salmon through the ice already. Ice depths are reportedly reaching up to 8 inches on the lake's southern and northern ends, but it is still a little thin in the mid-lake area. While December brought cold temperatures, it also brought lots of snow, creating mixed ice conditions. Our Southwest Regional Fisheries managers want to remind anglers to be careful of the changing ice conditions and keep an eye on colder nighttime temperatures to help strengthen the early season ice. Fish and Game will not provide routine ice condition updates this year, so be sure to check with local tackle shops for the latest conditions. Over the past few years, we have seen an increase in the number of yellow perch caught during our annual October gill netting survey relative to the lower abundance period between 2017 and 2019. This trend continued into 2024, where we saw the highest perch catch rates since the early 2010s. A large component of our catch this year was a strong class of 8 to 11 inch fish. While 8-inch perch may be a nuisance to anglers looking for those 14-plus inch perch, this bodes well for the future of the Lake Cascade perch fishery. Similar to what we saw with the cohort of 8 to 11 inch perch in 2012 and 2013, We expect the younger cohorts of perch observed this year to reach quote-unquote jumbo status in 4 years or so. This means we should have lots of large perch in the fishery through the late 2020s. But have no fear. We still see large perch in our sampling gear and plenty of reports from anglers reeling in 14-plus inch perch throughout the open water and ice seasons. So the bottom line, with lots of fish around from multiple cohorts, we should continue to see good catch rates for jumbo perch in Lake Cascade in the foreseeable future. Those who have had the opportunity to fish Lake Cascade probably have hooked into a handful of other species while fishing for perch. In our annual surveys, we typically capture up to 12 different species. Some of the more common fish we catch are rainbow trout, coho salmon, kokanee, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, pumpkin seed, bluegill, and black crappie. You may encounter these fish when targeting perch, but don't hesitate to change tactics and gear to target some of these other species during the ice and open water seasons. Fortunately, we know from the University of Idaho graduate study that perch are the major food source for all predators in Lake Cascade. So lures that imitate age 0 perch in color and size are a great starting point. And if lures ain't doing the trick, try to tip them with worms or maggots, or even consider switching to a jig. Oftentimes, folks catch rainbow trout, coho salmon, and kokanee just a foot or so below the ice surface, and the bass are typically associated with rocky bottoms near the shoreline. Don't be afraid to set up a tip-up or an extra rod a bit shallower than you are used to. During the 2025 ice season, the Idaho Department of Parks and Recreation will maintain ice fishing access at Poison Creek, Boulder Creek, Van Wyck, and Blue Heron boat ramps. In 2022, Fish and Game worked with a private landowner to sign a 5-year Access Yes agreement to create a formal parking area for ice anglers at Stonebreaker Lane. The Stonebreaker parking allows angler access to Lake Cascade from the Sugarloaf boat ramp area during the winter months. Keep in mind, this is on and surrounded by private property, so please be courteous. In 2023, the 90-degree turn on West Mountain Road was widened to improve parking for walk-in anglers during the winter season. This location does not have a ton of space, so if you're hauling a trailer, please consider using Poison Creek to park your rig. Please refer to the maps associated with this press release for more information on ice fishing access sites on Lake Cascade. For more information on Lake Cascade and other McCall subregion fisheries, contact the McCall Fish and Game office at 208-634-8137 or Regional Fisheries Biologist Anthony Dangora or Jordan Messner, the Regional Fisheries Manager. All right, next up, another ice fishing report on the far side of the state. Fisheries folks in the Upper Snake region have been busy this season, and there's a lot of good news to share, brought to you by Regional Fisheries Biologist Nathan Tillotson. The lake ice capped this year on November 19th, and according to Tillotson, they've been building ice ever since. In most places, Henry's is up to about 11 inches of ice, but several pressure ridges are running throughout the lake with some thinner spots near springs, so be careful out there. Fishing was good on first ice, with several people reporting excellent catch rates from the outlet, state park, and hatchery. Catch rates have slowed considerably since then, but folks are still reliably catching fish at the hatchery and state park. With light snow loads, access to the state park and cliffs has remained open, but those locations will likely be inaccessible by wheeled vehicles soon. As access becomes more limited, don't be afraid to go for a walk to get away from the crowds and drill several holes to find the edges of weed beds. The shallows, roughly around 2 feet of water, produce fish much more reliably than people think, so don't be afraid to try close to shore. Folks have been having more success with subtle presentations lately, such as tungsten teardrop jigs tipped with plastics and bait, or worms rested on the bottom. Remember, the trout harvest season on Henry's Lake closes on February 14th. Henry's Lake is catch and release only from February 15th through the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. Henry's Lake is heavily supplemented by hatchery-reared fish. 100% of the hybrid cut bows in Henry's Lake are hatchery origin, and roughly 90% of the Yellowstone cutthroat trout are hatchery origin as well. It's a little harder to determine what proportion of our brook trout are wild versus hatchery origin, but we can say confidently that about, or at least 45% of the brookies in Henry's Lake are stocked fish. In addition to increasing stocking numbers to compensate for lower catch rates in recent years, we're conducting a number of stocking strategy evaluations to identify ways to bolster recruitment, or the proportion of fish that survive to a catchable size of our stocked fish. Staff know that recruitment of each year class varies considerably, but it's extremely difficult to pinpoint what factors contribute to annual recruitment variability. While our fisheries managers can't change things like water temperature, annual snowpack, water level, or water chemistry/quality, it is possible to change things like timing, location, and fish size at stocking. In 2024, we stocked roughly 70,000 Yellowstone cutthroat trout into Henry's Lake tributaries, such as Targhee Creek, Duck Creek, and Timber Creek, and we will be comparing survival of those fish to the survival of our lake stock fish in the coming years. If you're an angler in the Upper Snake area and want to learn more, fisheries biologist Nathan Tillotson has a whole bunch more information in his story, which you can find the link below and nerd out to your heart's content. That's back-to-back ice fishing stories for you this week, and if you're like me and have only dabbled in ice fishing or have always wanted to give it a try, I'm going to include a link to our ice fishing webpage in the show notes. The page is perfect for those looking to get into the pastime, including other hard water fisheries, safety tips, and what to bring. And with that, it's time for the Rapid Fire Bulletin. This year marks the 4th year of the 5-year evaluation into whether the manual removal of rainbow trout can positively benefit the abundance and genetic structure of Yellowstone cutthroat trout in the South Fork Snake River. Meeting our suppression goal without the use of boat electrofishing emphasizes the important contribution from outfitters and the anglers that contribute to the Rainbow Trout Harvest Incentive Program, and is a poignant example of how all anglers can make a difference and contribute to Yellowstone cutthroat trout management on the South Fork Snake River. There's a ton more information available in Sage Unsworth's story on our website, so hit the link below if you want to learn more. The application period for disabled veterans and children with special needs big game tag programs is January 2nd through January 31st for 2025. The Disabled Veterans Special Big Game Tag Program allows a qualified organization to apply for a special big game hunt tag on behalf of a disabled veteran. In addition, each year up to 5 big game tags can be made available for children sponsored by a qualified organization with life-threatening medical conditions, as certified by a qualified and licensed physician. If you have any questions, please contact Fish and Game's licensing office at licenses@idfg.idaho.gov. The Magic Valley region will be offering 2 hunter education classes in February. The first class is a combination of hunter and bow hunter education that will be taught in Glens Ferry from February 14th to March 1st. The second class is a women-only class in Jerome from February 20th through the 22nd. Check out Terry Thompson's story on our website if you're interested. And also happening in the Magic Valley region, regional staff started feeding elk at the Bullwhacker feed site beginning the week of January 5th, as snow has started to accumulate and temperatures are dropping. Residents and visitors are asked to stay away from the feed site in order to not disturb the elk. It is anticipated that feeding will continue until April 2025, so go check out Terry Thompson's press release if you want to learn more, and link below. And that's all the news we have for this week, folks. Thanks for putting an ear to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin. If there's something on your mind, or if you got a question related to Fish and Game matters, feel free to drop us a line at podcast@idfg.idaho.gov. Again, that's podcast@idfg.idaho.gov. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you next week.